All right. So we are going to just continue to push right along. Going to get started first in some of the literature. We're on step 8. We made a list of people we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. The bare minimum amount of willingness we're going to have to do here is write the name down and hopefully talk about it a little bit. That's pretty much it. There's no need to make amends. There's nothing like that. We're just writing the name down and becoming willing to make these amends. So let's get back in to where we were. So some of us go the other way with this step. We can't wait to get, well, we already talked about that. Did I make us? All right. Some of us still believe that we're just basically nice people who have never truly harmed anyone except ourselves, that is. So these are the people who are always like, I'm only hurting myself. I'm not hurting you. Get away. And they isolate, they reject and withdraw. If we're truly stumped about who belongs in our amends list, or we have a vague idea that our family belongs there, but we're not sure why, it could be that we're overlooking something or that our denial is still pretty thick. Sometimes we're just not able to see the truth about certain situations, even after many years in recovery. A suggestion that many of us have followed is that if we think of someone to whom we seem to owe amends, but can't think of the situation that resulted in us owing the amends, put the name on the list anyway. We should sometimes we'll think about the why later on, and that goes vice versa as well. So if I am if I can recall the behavior, but I can't recall the name, write the behavior down. That's also another extremely valuable way to go about these amends, is to write down the behavior and then how many people or who can I recall that I caused that harm to. Or you could, if you don't know how you caused the person, you can't recall how you hurt them or the harm caused, you can always write the name down and then worry about the harm later. We should do the best we can with this step for now, contact our sponsor, and keep on working on our recovery. Got to keep that going, because the last thing we want to do is add amends to these amends that we're going to try to make. More will be revealed, as the saying goes. We just need to keep an open mind so that when the knowledge comes, we'll be prepared to accept it. And last but not least, many of us delay starting the step because we aren't willing to make amends to certain people. That goes back to what we were saying. Maybe I don't even think I caused harm, or maybe, yeah, I caused harm, but I'm not trying to make the amends to this person. We either resent them or we feel too afraid to ever imagine ourselves approaching them. We need to start this step and list the people, even if we're not sure we'll ever be able to make the amends. If it's truly unsafe to make the amends, our sponsor will help us figure out how to handle that situation. Are there any resentments that are getting in the way of your willingness to make amends? That's the question. Do you guys find yourself having any resentments that are getting in the willingness of you making your amends? And what are they? Who are these people?
Me, one is my ex-wife.
Keep on bringing her up, man.
I already got a list in my head.
Just start saying who they are.
Also, my current wife.
Good one.
My mom, my grandma,
I would say just family in general. Dad, sister.
It's like my resentment is getting in the way of my willingness to, I can't let that go. One of them for me was this guy. We'll call his name was Dan, and Dan sued me for damages to a snowmobile. Fuck that guy. and I owed him greater than $2,000 at the time. And my anger and resentment towards him was getting in the way of my willingness to make the amends financially, right? Like all I had to do was pay the guy this money, but I was so angry and bitter and resentful and feeling as though that it was unfair that I lost in court for the damage done to the snowmobile because I almost fucking died. I felt it was unfair, and that resentment was getting in the way of my willingness to make the amends. Does anybody want to go into more detail about one of these situations?
Well, mine's kind of crazy because with my dad, I've never actually done anything to him, but I have to make amends with him because of the resentments that I hold towards him because of shit that he's done to me. I don't want to keep holding on to it.
So you have to let go of what he's. Oh, I see what you're saying. So in order for you to make the amends, you got to let go of what he's done to you so that you can make the amends.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that's fucking tough, dude. That's exactly what we're talking about, too. Those are the resentments that are getting in the way of us making the amends. Anybody else have another example of that? It's okay if not.
My girl's mom treats her poorly, so I don't like her for that.
She did what?
My girlfriend's mom treats my girlfriend like doesn't treat her as good as I think she's good.
So the way you have a little bit of resentment for the way your girl's mom treats your girl, and her treating your girl that way is getting in the way of your willingness to go make amends to her.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Perfect, dude. Great job.
So, for me, with my ex-wife,
All right.
I have a son with her. So, I will make amends. I will go through it. And then she'll do something else that really, really pisses me off. Or, I go back out again after making the amends. And then cause more harm in that relationship. And in the relationship with my son. But I still want to blame her for, what she's doing, because what I'm doing is bad. My God, what she's doing is way worse than what I'm doing to her. So it's all her fault. Yeah. And that's said with a little bit of sarcasm, but, it still exists.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like a complicated situation you got there.
So, yeah, for the next, we've been dealing with this since my son was 2, and he's 14 now. So it'll get better, and then it'll get worse, and then it'll get better. But then I went back out, and it got much, much worse.
Oh, so you're imagining getting to a place where you can somehow let this go, but
Yes.
she's gonna do some other shit later on in the future.
Right.
That's
how it's worked, She'll need something from me, and then all of a sudden things get much, much better. And then all of a sudden she's in a better spot, and then it's, there are more resentments that come out, there are more problems, things that we disagree on about, raising our son. So my, where I'm at with it right now is I'm just going, God, just let him turn 18 so I can stop having to deal with her.
Yeah. Yep. I hear that. So imagining a future of not being angry or bitter or being treated unfairly in these situations is difficult to imagine, right? Just for today, are you able to let those resentments go?
Yes. Just for today. And then I'll have to be on my phone with my sponsor going, you know what that bitch said to me today? Stuff all over again. So it's 6 months.
Is that can everybody else give me a yes to that? Is there anyone is there anyone who's like unable to let go of any resentments just for today? One? Yeah, I see you. Which one are you unable to let go of just for today? Is it the dad?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just because he's done like so much shit. It's like it's hard for me to let go without like an apology, basically. So like,
Even
he's the type of person that I have to apologize to him before he apologizes to me, and I have nothing to apologize for.
Yeah, that's a sticky situation. Even though we can't forgive him or let it go just for today, are you willing to write the name down on the list anyways?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. Well, that's 8th step right there. So even though we can't think of how we harmed this dude, even though I can't imagine forgiving him for the harm that he caused me, I'm still willing to write the name down and discover that later, right?
Yeah.
All right. And we can worry about becoming willing later on, because this list that we're making is not like a list where we take it and we go, hey, I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry for everything I did, and thank you very much for forgiving me. Check. Hi, I wanted to let you know, hey, you don't line up these amends to go one after another in the same day, going from one person to the next, or you don't gather them all together like the opposite of an intervention, right? Like an intervention is where everybody sits you down and tells you what you're doing wrong and yada, yada, yada. It's not like amends is the opposite of an intervention where everybody sits down around you and you make an amends to every single person or whatever the case may be, right? This list is forever growing. This isn't a list that we write down once and then forget about it. It's something that we keep. It's something that keeps on going. And when the time is right to make the amends, which would include us being prepared, which would include us having knowledge of harm caused, etc., talking about it with another person, not acting out on these character defects, and being able to manage our emotions and making good decisions on a foundation of that, then hopefully we'll be able to make that amends. But until that's ready, the best thing we can do is probably just stay sober and just keep it going the way that it's been going, right? Because that's the only way that we're going to have a foundation even able to make these amends. Are there any people to whom I owe amends that may be a threat to my safety or I'm truly concerned about in some other way?
I got a question.
Yeah, I love questions, dude.
It's about the not over that's just for today. So I gotta go. Like I have no problem just for today, but like when I'm around her, I'll let it all go. But when I'm not around her, I'm still like, she is just rude. Like I don't like her. It's like I gotta go see her as soon as I leave this place. Like we're having Thanksgiving, and I gotta go see her there. And I'm gonna have to watch her be like, "Hey, I need you to do these dishes, honey," to her daughter. After she cooked everything and dished everything out and made all the food, set the table and all that, and she's just gonna sit there on her phone and I'm just gonna sit there like, yeah, I'll go help your daughter, I guess, which I might help her anyway. But it's just for today. I can do it. I can tolerate it. Like as soon as I get home, I'll be like, that was such a dickhead thing to do. Like not help or nothing.
Man, you're hitting the nail on the head with recovery without even knowing you're hitting it. You know what to do. You know what I mean? It's like forgiveness is huge in this, right? Like, okay, I am not too fond of my mother-in-law as well. Okay. And I mean, dude, yesterday we're walking around with my mom, my dad, my two kids, and we're just walking around the neighborhood. And here comes my mother-in-law barreling down a cul-de-sac, dude, going like, 60 down a fucking cul-de-sac. Doesn't even see us. It's a cul-de-sac. How do you not even fucking see us? We're fucking walking in the middle of the fucking street. She didn't see us. She didn't slow down. She didn't say, hey, happy Thanksgiving. Just bombs by us, right? Dude, this is the thing about forgiveness is every single person at one point was 4 years old. All right? 4. And life just pushed them into becoming who they are today, right? And if you were to run back my mother-in-law or your mother-in-law's life, you would see a person who life just ended up pushing into becoming an absolute jackass. Okay? Through no fault of their own. They just happen to be in situations. They're handling it the best way they know how to based upon their previous experiences. And most of the time, they fuck it up. Okay. And part of what makes me so bitter and resentful towards her is when I look at my fiance, I see some of the worst traits of my mother-in-law. So sometimes I'm literally looking at my mother-in-law, she'll do some shit and I'll be like, that's where that part of Jessica I absolutely hate came from. You know what I mean? And just as much as she was a 4-year-old and has been dealing with life as it's been coming, so have I. You know what I mean? And I am blessed enough to have been in a position to learn and apply new perspective of my life, myself, the world, and the people around me, which they do not have the luxury of getting, right? At one point, I was helplessly, naively going around causing harm to people to a degree that maybe people were looking at my dad and saying, I love Bob, but I can't be around his kids because they're fucking junkies, dude. You know what I mean? Just as much as I am capable of causing that harm and having people look at me that way, so is my mother-in-law. That's where the forgiveness comes in. Like, she is dealing with life the only way she knows how to deal with life. And her inability, like my mother-in-law does the same thing where she sits on the couch, she just does her phone, she doesn't help with nothing, she don't do no fucking dishes, she don't do nothing like that, you know what I mean? But that's her life, and she's the unfortunate one to never have someone come around to tell her that that's the wrong way to live. And I'm not the person who has to tell her that, because whenever I try to waste my breath telling her all that shit, it goes wrong. I become the bad guy. And I pride myself on education. So I believe that I know how to explain things to people in multiple different ways using analogies and metaphors so that they're able to grasp what I am saying. And what frustrates me and angers me and annoys me that makes me angry towards her is the lack of being able to understand that. Like, she can't see it. She can't see my perspective.
I know I'm not supposed to be holding people to like a certain
standard expectation.
Standard. Yeah, because like I'm sure her priorities are completely different than mine. But like with me, if I see somebody that's doing dishes after I've just ate what they just cooked, I don't think they should have to cook or have to clean. I'm happy to go help. And she thinks the same thing. She says, like, every time we ever go to her house at dinner or anything, she's like, whoever cooks does, the other person does dishes. And she says it after me and my chick did like the cooking, and she's like, all right, well, y'all cooked. Oliver, you gotta go do the dishes. I'm like, I don't do the cooking. But all right, whatever. I'll get out there, I'll do the dishes. She just goes right on the couch. And I'm like, So I'll get blown up. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, honey, if I go home, I'll see you after I do these dishes that we cooked and made together for everybody to eat.
Yep. And yeah, man, I hear you. It's like using heroin with someone and they're telling you need to go to rehab. Like, we're using heroin, but we should be going to rehab, but you should definitely go to rehab. It's like, what the fuck? We should all be going to rehab, motherfucker. You know what I mean? But let me tell you, the difference is you're going to rehab. They're not. You see what I'm saying? That's you're cleaning the dishes. They're not. So you are representing the character. You see what I'm saying? Now,
I should hold her to those standards too, but like at the same time, it kills me.
It does. Now, just a helpful tool is that in that process of knowing someone has to do the dishes and you stand up and you do the dishes or whatever the case may be, there is there's the idea of not having an attitude. You know what I mean? Because that attitude towards the mom for not doing the work can make the work you're doing be fucked up because it's out of spite or it's out of anger, you know what I mean? Or some other shit. And you don't do the dishes out of anger or spite. You do them out of love and compassion and caring because it's the right thing to do. So if you're doing it out of spite, you know what I mean? That removes that character of I'm doing this because it's right or whatever the case may be. And that can be misconstrued from people observing it, i.e. your fucking girlfriend. We don't want her to think that we're doing the dishes out of spite for her mom because that's her fucking mom, dude,
She knows that I do it because I do care about her. And I was just, I guess I expect her or my girlfriend's mom to help too, because she ate the food too. She did littler than I did. I helped with the food and ate it. She just ate it, and then I'm gonna go do the dishes. She's just gonna watch me do the dishes, and it's like, I guess we're just doing everything here. It just like, do you not have any self-respect for yourself? Like, treat your daughter with a little respect or anything, it just blows my mind.
Doesn't it? It does blow, bro. I'm telling you, dude. And I'm telling you, bro, when that shit blows your mind, you just go,
I try to just breathe and just not get angry about it. Like, just think about something else while I'm doing it.
You think about how much you love your girlfriend, man. You think about, all right, I'm going to give you a little anecdote, and then I want to kind of like push forward. You might be able to get some more answers.
So
but
I'm not trying to hold that.
No, you're good. But today is an opportunity for you to practice forgiving her for having that thought process because she's powerless over it and she can't control it. My mother-in-law lived with me for 10 months. Worst 10 months of my life. And I was bitter, resentful, angry, yada, yada, yada. I'm at the gym one day and I'm getting fucking water at the water thing. And here comes this guy and he's like a plumber or whatever. And he's fixing the water. And I go, hey man, let me get by real quick. I just gotta, I gotta get in there and get some water. He's like, yeah, man, no problem. I'm just a plumber. I'm just the water guy. No big deal. I'm like, all right, dude, like filling up my water. Like, my bad. I wasn't trying to. He's like, but he goes, I love my job though, man. I really do. I love bringing fresh water in. Something breaks down. I come in, I make the repair, put the filter in. I love my job. And I'm like, yeah, dude, totally, man. I'll catch you later. And he's like, you know why? And I'm like, what the fuck, dude? I'm trying to get back to my workout. He's like, you know why? Because I love my wife, man. And I love my wife so much. And you know something? Her father-in-law is staying with us right now. And right then and there, I was ready to connect with this guy. You know what I mean? I was ready to be like, your father-in-law says, that must suck ass, bro. Oh my God. Bro, my mother-in-law, blah, 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 blah. Just totally jazzed with this guy. And as I'm taking my deep breath to be like, as I'm taking my deep breath, he goes, yeah, man, it's a pain having him stay in my house. But you know something, man? I made a vow that I love my wife. And because I love my wife, that means that I have to love everything about her. And that means that I got to love him too. So it's an honor for me to take care of her dad because I love taking care of her and anything else. And I was just, bro, I was floored. I was like, I could never think that way. You know what I mean? I was like, that is impossible thinking. And from that conversation, like that was the conversation that kind of prompted me to say, am I looking at this from the wrong perspective? Like, is there a different way of looking at this? Because that guy's right. If I love my fiance, I love everything about her, which means I have to also love and accept her mother-in-law. Now, how I love and accept her mother-in-law is not the same as how I love and accept her. So how I do that, I have to be a little bit more patient. I have to be a little bit more understanding. I have to do things like go, oh, that's just fucking Judy. You know what I mean? In order to kind of just make it okay in the relationship. So I don't know what you got to do today to let that shit go and move on forward. But today's your opportunity to practice it, And if you really love that girl, then you love everything about her, man, including her. So, okay. To the people, dude, thank you. Please, like, I need questions. Like, bro, as a teacher, therapist, like whatever the fuck I am, questions really get me going and giving you answers that I believe are actually valuable. A lot of answers I give in here, I just kind of jazz and assume situations, make up, scenarios and antidotes, etc. But for the most part, when you guys ask me questions directly correlated to what we're talking about, that's where you're going to get like the best detailed answer. Not only like recovery related, but science related too. Like I could back that shit with behavioral science all day. The suggestion I just gave you. So before we can actually begin making our list, there's one final concept with which we must familiarize ourselves. That is the meaning of harm in this step. We need to strive to understand all the ways in which it is possible to cause harm so that our list can be thorough. Certain types of harm are obvious. For instance, if we stole money or property from a business, that's quite obviously a form of harm. In addition, most of us have no trouble recognizing physical or emotional abuse as a type of harm. Then there are situations where we have no problem recognizing what we did was harmful, but may have difficulty identifying who, in particular, we harmed. For instance, we may have cheated on a test at school. Did this harm the instructor? We ask ourselves, our fellow students, ourselves, the students who came after us, who had to pay the price of our instructor's mistrust because of our dishonesty. The answer to this question is simple, that they all were harmed, even if only indirectly. They belong on our 8-step list. Finally, we get to the deeper types of harm. These types of harm may be the most damaging, for they strike at the most vulnerable places in our human heart. For instance, We had a friend, their friendship was perhaps an old one, spanning over many years. Emotions, trust, even personal identity, all these were engaged in the friendship we shared. This relationship really mattered to our friend and to us as well. Then, without explanation, because of some real or imagined slight, we withdrew from the friendship and never tried to renew it. Losing a friend is painful enough without the added burden of not knowing why. Many of us inflicted just this type of harm on someone. We damaged that person's sense of trust, and it may have taken years to heal. A variation on this is that we may have allowed someone to take the blame for a relationship ending, making the person feel unlovable, when in reality, we were just tired of the relationship and too lazy to maintain it. There are many different ways we can inflict deep emotional harm: neglect, withdrawal, exploitation, manipulation, and humiliation, to name a few. The victims and nice people among us may find that we made others feel inferior when we passed ourselves off as better than everyone else, projecting an attitude of moral superiority. The competent and self-sufficient among us may find their names on the 8-step list by thinking about the people whose offers of help and gestures of support were rejected. Making amends, that's crazy that they're talking about making amends to people who may have offered help and gestures of help and we rejected them. Like, that causes harm. An additional struggle that many of us face when we identify harm arises from an automatic tendency to focus only on the time before we stop using. It's a little easier for us to be rigorously honest about the harm we cause in our active addiction. We were using drugs. We were different people then. However, we have all caused harm during our recovery. Remember, whether we intended to or not doesn't matter. In fact, we've probably all caused harm to people with whom we share our recovery. Other NA members, we may have gossiped about them, withdrawn from them, responded with insensitivity to their pain, interfered in a sponsorship relationship, tried to control a sponsee's behavior, behaved like an ingrate with our sponsor, stole Seventh Tradition money, manipulated people by using our clean time as a source of credibility in a service argument, or sexually exploited a newcomer, to name a few relatively common examples. Most of us have an extremely hard time placing these situations on our 8-step list because the thought of making amends makes us so uncomfortable. We hold ourselves accountable to a higher standard of behavior around NA, and we're sure that others expect more from us. Also, the fact is that our fellow NA members are likely to be especially forgiving because they know what we're trying to do. But again, we should avoid worrying about 9th step right now. It's so funny. Like, it gives us a whole, like, even the literature can't avoid talking about the 9th step. Like, I just find that to be so funny. Let's see how much more we got. Okay. We have a little bit more. I'm going to go through and just read this. Excuse me. And then we'll just take it from there. First thing we need to now, making the list. Now we're talking about making the list. The first thing we need to know is that this is not a list that we can keep in our heads. We need to put each name down and what we did to harm the person down on paper. Once it's on paper, it's hard to forget anyone or go back into denial about an amends we'd rather avoid. If for some reason we can't use paper, use a tape recorder or whatever method you're going to do it. Now, for those of you in here, I mean, I would take some notes. And if you don't plan on taking notes today, you should go write this shit down at some point. When we're ready to begin our list, we sit down, recall all we learned about harm, and start writing. Some names are going to spring up to mind immediately. Others may come to mind as we think of them, about the types of harm we cause. We absolutely need to go back through our 4th step and search out any information we can extract from that. We should include every name and situation we could think of, even if we're relatively but not entirely sure that our sponsor is going to tell us we don't owe any amends in that situation. It's almost always better to go delete names than to try to recall names we should have added, but didn't. When we're going over the list with our sponsor, in addition, there may be times when we remember an incident in which we cause harm, but not the names of the people involved. We can at least list the incident. Putting ourselves on the list may seem awkward to some of us. We may have been informed in our early recovery that making amends to ourselves was a self-centered idea, that we need to stop thinking about ourselves all the time and start thinking about the people we harmed. Then the whole notion of making amends to ourselves may have been confusing. Some of us probably thought that making amends should involve rewarding ourselves for staying clean or some other accomplishment. We may have tried to do this by buying ourselves things we couldn't afford or by indulging in other compulsions. In reality, the way we make amends to ourselves is by stopping irresponsible or destructive behavior. We need to identify the ways we created our own problems, that is, harmed ourselves, through our inability to accept personal responsibility. Then when we add ourselves to our list, we can list the harm we caused to our finances, self-image, health, etc. Identify the ways we create our own problem through our inability to accept personal responsibilities. There's a delicate situation many of us have faced. What if we hurt our sponsor? He or she doesn't know about the harm, and we will likely find out when we go over this list. You came back in, I'm glad. In this, I saw you walking out. I'm like, man, he better not fucking miss this. In this situation, we should consult with another member whose recovery we respect, perhaps our sponsor's sponsor. So in the event that you hurt your sponsor, what you should do is try to talk to someone else in recovery whose recovery you value and try to see what their opinion is. So wherever you had to go,
That's good, because I don't have the same sponsor as the one that I hurt previously, but I hurt my current sponsor too.
How'd you hurt him?
Huh?
How'd you hurt the sponsor you have now?
The sponsor that I have now is working at a detox, and he came to pick me up, like in his job. He came to pick me up in Cincinnati and drive me back to Louisville. And I was at a job interview, and I got drunk at the hotel room. And the hotel kicked me out, and the police picked me up to go to the police station. They called the police station as they were taking me in and said, "Please don't arrest him. I'm coming to get him. I'll be there in a few minutes." And they said, "Well, if he's good, we'll let him stay out in the lobby and just wait for you." I walked out across the street to a convenience store, and this bum said, "Hey man, you need something good?" And I go, "I'm an alcoholic, not a drug addict." And he pulls out a fifth of vodka and said, "Well, how about this? $5." And I go, so I'm sitting on the steps of the Cincinnati police station, drinking a fifth of vodka and smoking a cigarette, while the cops walk back and forth by me. And when my sponsor pulled up at midnight to pick me up and shoved the bottle of vodka in my backpack and hopped in the car, and it was while he was driving me, and he wasn't supposed to have, he was supposed to check everything out and put everything in the back seat, but he thought, well, he was at the police station, so he didn't have anything on it. And I sat in the back seat and drank the entire way. And I was drunk when I got there, and I told everybody there, and I almost got on fire.
Oh.
And then he stayed. He was supposed to be there till 3, but he stayed like 2 hours late, checking me in and doing the processing. And he was in drug court, and he missed the call that he was supposed to go in a urine test for it, and then he got arrested for that, and he's spent a week in jail as a result of that.
Oh.
And then 3 days later, I asked him to be my sponsor. And he goes, "Yeah, man, I'd love to."
Wow. That is such a great story. Yeah, definitely going to have to make some amends to him. But we'll consult with another member before we go and make the amends for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Good story, dude. Thank you for
That's my
sharing.
story. I'm gonna go to that.
Okay, I'll see you when you get back. All right, so the next thing you want to do is list the people you've harmed and the specific ways you've harmed each one. So now we're going to talk about becoming willing. What does it mean to become willing, right? To become willing to run a marathon, you got to practice, you got to have the materials, you got to know your diet, probably got to practice way ahead to become willing, right? To even become willing, you have to want to run a marathon, you have to want to prepare and all that shit. So what does it become willing to make amends? Now that we have our list, or added new names to the list we've been keeping since our first time through the 8th step, it's time we get willing to make amends. In order to become willing, we have to know at least a little about what making amends involves. Earlier in this guide, we talked about the need to do more than just change our behavior, but some of us may be afraid that we just aren't capable of changing. We're sincere. We want to refrain from ever repeating the same behavior again, but we think about the times when we've made promises before. Aren't we subject to doing the same thing again? This is when we have to really believe in our recovery. No matter how long we've been clean and the wrongs for which we're making amends, we have to have faith that the God of our understanding will give us strength and the ability to change. Why is saying I'm sorry alone not enough to repair the damage we caused? Why can't you just say I'm sorry and let bygones be bygones?
Ego.
Because I've said it too many times and then did it again.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm never going to do this again.
Because
And do it again.
actions speak louder than words, and you can say you're sorry all you want until you actually show people that you're making a change and show people that you're doing better. Nobody's going to care how many times you say sorry.
Right. Now, off of that, why is saying why is just changing the behavior not sufficient enough? Why should you also say like I'm sorry or make some sort of verbal amends?
Well, because it states your intent, but if you state your intent without acting towards that, then your words mean nothing. Like, I'm a man, right? I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. So if I'm not about what I say, how do you measure yourself? How do you measure your integrity?
Yep. And then
Core values.
if I'm not backing up what I'm saying, then I'm like a hypocrite. And then if I'm not I see saying I'm sorry instead of just the behavioral changes, like what you said, like the acknowledgement that what I did was wrong. You know what I mean? It's got to be like some sort of recognition and closure to the situation, kind of, how I imagine it a little bit. So heck yeah. For some amends, we'll find that we're willing as soon as we put the name on the list. For others, willingness might not come so easy. It's very rare that we don't owe at least some financial amends, whether they're people from who we stole, people who lent us money and never paid them back, businesses or lending institutions. We know that making the amends is going to deprive us of money we'd rather keep for ourselves. It may take time for us to appreciate the profound internal freedoms that come from discharging such debts and thus gain the willingness to make these amends. It may help to ask our sponsor to give us our higher power to give us the willingness to make these amends. Do you have any financial amends that you need to make?
Yeah. I got a credit card I can pay off.
Oh yeah, we were just talking about the credit card, dude.
I read that thing up like $2,000.
Yeah.
Didn't have any credit, and I got myself a secured credit card, and only had a $200 limit on it.
And then I raised my credit from like nothing to like 650 using that. And then I was like, well, I've got a stable job. I mean, I was using, but I was like, I've got a stable job. I'm making good money. I can run it up. It'll be fine. I'll just pay it off in big chunks. Because I didn't really have any other bills at the time. And now it's gotten to the point where since I'm not making any money, I can't make, the payments to pay it off. And now it's just sitting there accruing debt. I've got to get that paid. I mean, I got the means to do it. The money I've got is frozen for a certain period of time, and I can't pay it off until I unfreeze it.
What would your life be like if these amends were met?
Wouldn't have a weight over my head, because if I go to jail or something, that's going to sit, because I can't rely on my family.
Gotcha. So if they were paid,
then and if I was to go to jail, I'd be like, okay, well, I mean, whatever, I go to jail. I'll serve out. I'll pay. I'll do my time. I'll serve out.
right?
But it's one thing to serve out and not have any obligations or amenities outside of jail, but when you do, you're sitting there. It's just more anxiety and pressure on your chest.
Yep, I agree. Good answer. Yeah, I feel like debt feels like there's a little midget choking me, just like giving me a little like choke out from behind.
Some people might be into that kind of thing.
But it just makes me feel like that. So when all of that is like gone, like when it's paid off, I just feel like I can breathe better. I don't have, all this overwhelming stuff like daunting on me. All right. Do I owe any amends to people who I'm just going to kind of breeze through these because I want to show you guys the video and then we're going to wrap up. But whatever, it's not too much to read this shit. So let's just read it. Very rare that we don't at least owe some amends, financial amends. That's what we did. Some of us owe amends to people who also harmed us. They are usually the amends we have the most difficulty becoming willing to make. It seems like every time we think about these amends, we get so angry thinking about what the other person did to us that we forget about making the amends. But our recovery calls on us to practice the spiritual principle of forgiveness. Through prayer and any additional help we need to seek out, we can find it within ourselves to forgive people who have also harmed us. Do I owe any amends to people who also harmed me? What have I done to become more willing to make these amends? Amends that we can't ever see ourselves making may also be on our list. Maybe we're so unwilling that we don't even want to try praying for willingness. We can't ever imagine having any compassion for the people to whom we owe amends. In these cases, we just need to leave the amends on our list. We don't have to make all our amends in one day or in any set amount of time. It may take some time to become willing to make some amends. Every time we look at our 8-step list, we should ask ourselves if we've become willing to make this amends yet. If not, we can keep checking periodically. So you just keep on coming back to it if you're not ready. Eventually, hopefully, the time will come where you are prepared to make that amends, whether it's financially or you've forgiven the person or the opportunity even presents itself. Now, just like what Tavian was talking about, what we're going to watch here is a clip of the power of forgiveness. Now, you got to remember, anger or annoyance is a natural, instinctive state of mind generating from circumstances, moods, or relationships in which we were treated unfairly. So, in order to forgive, I need to stop feeling angry or resentful, which may be the natural way to feel. What you're going to see in this clip coming up is resentment and anger is the normal way that people would appreciate or even promote for someone to respond. And you're going to see here someone practicing forgiveness in its opposite. Any questions before I get started? All right, this is a really good video. I really like this one. Most of the videos I show you guys I like.
We're in Lexington, Kentucky, and the sentencing of Trey Alexander Relford. He's pled guilty to the 2015 murder and robbery of Salahuddin Jitmood, a 22-year-old who'd been delivering pizzas. Jitmood was making his final delivery of the night when Relford and two accomplices lured him into their